Hello everyone. I hope you're all doing really well. Yeah, another day of lockdown. But this is the last lesson of what we're sort of looking at really in terms of this module, which is good. So you've got to the end, and we're looking at kind of what conclusions we can draw from the Labour government. Now, chances are, if you got a big question in your exam on this section of the work, so on booklet 3, it's either going to talk about Labour winning the general election. It could talk about how successful the NHS was, but it's probably most likely to talk about the overall impact of the Labour government. So, how successful they were. Now, if you're going to answer that properly, you've got to talk about a number of different things right across the board. So, you've got to talk about the welfare state, you've got to talk about the NHS, you've got to talk about the Education for All Act, you've got to Education Act, the Homes for All policy, and then you've also got to talk about nationalisation. So there's lots of things for us to consider when we're looking at how good the Labour government was between 1945 and 1951. Quick kind of thing to talk about. It's not that important, but Labour didn't get in again in 1951. They didn't win the election. The Conservatives got back into power. Now, the leaders were the same for the 1951 general election. So again, it was Churchill versus Attlee. But there are a few reasons why Labour didn't get in again. One of them was that many believed that Labour had done all the things that they had promised, and there wasn't much more to achieve. So many felt that it was just what was needed was a continuation of what Labour had done, not actually, there weren't any many new policies that Labour came up with. Secondly, the country entered into war with North Korea. So North Korea invaded South Korea, and that cost the government a lot of money again. And they wanted a proven wartime leader. And of course, the most proven wartime leader was Winston Churchill, and they wanted him to oversee North Korea. The other thing was that many people who were very prominent figures in the Labour government were starting to get very old and had been in government a long time. So, Nyron Bevan had resigned. Ernest Bevin, who we know was in charge of demobilisation, he died. And there were a few other ministers that were just seen as a bit too over the hill. So the Conservatives got back into power. But what we're looking at, and we're going to look at, is what things, how successful were the Labour government of 1945 to 51. So we'll talk about in the next kind of couple of videos the things that we need to talk about. But that's your general overview.